God has many attributes, but one attribute stands out and is repeated over and over again in the scriptures, and that is the merciful nature of God. In this series on mercy, I will share with you my reflections on God's loving mercy from the perspective of the Jewish culture to the impact of the Babylonian exile on Israel, down to the Gospel of St. Luke, the evangelist to the Gentiles. Welcome to the podcast series on God's mercy. Continuing our discussion of the mercy of God, we now go to the second part of Exodus 34, verse 6, which goes like this: God, slow to anger and abundant in kindness and truth, preserver of kindness for thousands of generations. First, let's talk about God being slow to anger. This part right here is very interesting because it does not negate the fact that God can get angry and will get angry when needed. It appeals to me because I work in the field of psychology and I have a great appreciation for the value of negative emotions such as sadness, frustrations, and even anger. They are a normal part in the process of healing, realizations, and growth. But God does not get angry as human beings do. He does not need to go through any human processes as we do. However, He does get displeased by sin, inequity, and transgressions of mankind because He is holy by nature. But in Hebrew, saying that God is slow to anger implies that God gives human beings the time they need to learn from their mistakes, make amends, and turn back to Him. The word slow here indeed evoke the element of time. God understands that for us to learn to know to love Him, we need time. And we see this clearly both in the Old and New Testaments whenever God takes His time and does not rush things. He even waits for several generations just to give mankind the time they need to learn and turn away from sin. Now let's talk about God being abundant in kindness or love. We hear this attribute many times about God, but for the Hebrews, there is more to this characteristic than just being kind or loving. Abundance here means more inclined to be kind and loving. It means that God is more inclined and chooses to love more. It is God's tendency to love and be kind rather than just settling to the minimum requirements of justice. Which is why in Psalm 103, it is said that He, God, does not treat us as our sins deserve or repay us according to our iniquities. And also in John chapter 7, we see Jesus standing between the woman caught in adultery and the Jewish leaders. Jesus chose mercy over condemnation. Neither will I condemn you. Go and sin no more, He said. Next, we hear God is abundant in truth, or in Hebrew, faithfulness. God is faithful like a rock, as it is said in Psalm 18. Being a rock means being unmoved, being stable, being fixed. And when we construct something over a rock, we are sure to have security and stability. The same goes for those who rely on God. We can rely that He will fulfill His promises. We can trust Him that He will not retract on His words. We can count on Him, and He did not disappoint us, but fulfilled His promise of salvation by sending us His Son. And lastly, Exodus 34 verse 6 says that God is the preserver of kindness for thousands of generations. In Hebrew, this means that God remembers the virtues and merits of His faithful servants who came before us. For this reason, we can claim that we are Abraham's children in faith. We can hope that as we lift our prayers before God, He will remember Abraham's faithfulness. This also reminds me of the communion of saints, in which the merits of God's holy servants act as a bank of goodness through which we all can appeal whenever we face God in the misery of our sins, and rest assured that He will remember the faithfulness of His saints more than our unfaithfulness. There is still a third part in our discussion of God's mercy from Exodus 34 verse 6. But for now, I hope that, just like me, today's topic reminded you of just how extraordinary God is in His love and mercy, and that He is incomparable to anything and anyone in this regard. But more importantly, I pray that what we learned today has inspired you to seek God in the sacrament of reconciliation, knowing in your heart that He is inclined to forgive you, to heal you, and to love you more than you could ever hope for or imagine. Peace be with us all. Thank you for listening. This podcast is a personal initiative of mine in my desire to bring God wherever His people are. I believe that the more we talk about God, the more we bring Him into our consciousness, the more we are reminded that He is real and He is ever close to each one of us. My prayer is that you discover Him personally, by yourself, and see that what He wants is nothing but happiness for you. God bless us all.